My name is Dennis Calloway, and I was 62 years old the afternoon my son called to tell me the board had voted, and my name was no longer on the door. I had built Calloway Integrated Services from a used panel van and $14,000 in savings. I knew the smell of that shop floor, metal shavings and machine oil, and particular cold of a Georgia morning before the overhead lights had warmed the space. I drove home with a cardboard box on the passenger seat, the framed photo of our first job site sitting on top. Facing up, what I already knew, and what none of them had bothered to read, was everything. Welcome back to Dad's True Revenge, where quiet patience always outlasts loud cruelty. If you've ever sacrificed while someone took the credit, this story is for you. Drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. You're going to love it here. My name is Dennis Calloway. I am 64 years old, and I live on Habersham Street in Savannah's Ardsley Park neighborhood. In the same house I bought in 1994, when the company had its first profitable year. The house has a front porch that faces east and gets the morning light between 7 and 9. Ruth used to bring coffee out there on Saturdays. She passed 4 years ago. A second stroke, quiet and fast, the way she did most things. I have not changed much about the porch since. I started Calloway Integrated Services in the spring of 1991. I was 31 years old, recently licensed, recently married, and in possession of exactly $14,000 in personal savings. I used a Connelline panel van I had bought off a retired electrician in Augusta, and a list of 12 potential clients I had identified by driving the Savannah commercial corridors myself and writing down the names on building directories. The first job was a lighting retrofit on a warehouse on the east side. I pulled the panel myself, ran the conduit myself, filed the permit myself. It took 11 days. The client paid in 30. I kept every dollar in a separate account and treated it as if it belonged to someone I had not yet hired. By 1997, I had a crew of 8. By 2003, I had 31 employees, a second office in Brunswick, and the Port Authority contract that changed everything. I drove Ruth to her physical therapy appointments every Tuesday and Friday for 8 months after her first stroke in 2009, leaving the site at 3:15 p.m., back by 5:30, never telling the crew why I was leaving. I worked the panel board myself on every commercial job for the first 6 years until I could hire a second crew because I did not believe in asking a man to do work I was not willing to do beside him. I maintained the company's bonding and licensing renewals personally every year for 31 years. I never missed a filing date. I paid Marcus's and Diane's college tuition in full, $67,400 combined. Our company retained earnings before either of them had worked a single shift inside the building. Marcus joined the company in 2007 at 23. He had a business degree from Georgia Southern and a particular way of saying the word scalable that I did not have a name for yet. He was good with clients. He dressed well. He spoke in the language of growth metrics and market positioning, and the clients we were pursuing in that period responded to that language. So I gave him room. Diane had been doing the company's bookkeeping since 2010. She was organized, precise, and had her mother's instinct for when a number was wrong before she had finished calculating it. I was proud of them both. I did not see Garrett Pruitt coming. He arrived in Diane's life in 2015 and in the company's organizational chart in 2017 when Diane suggested he could help professionalize the operations side. He had a background in facilities management consulting and a confidence I recognized as the kind that comes not from having built anything but from having advised people who had. My stomach dropped the afternoon Diane introduced him as incoming SOO. I kept my expression level. I shook his hand. His grip was the kind that wants you to notice it. That same year, at an October board meeting, Marcus suggested I consider stepping back a little from the day-to-day. He said it in the tone of someone presenting a reasonable option. My throat tightened. I said I would think about it. I did not think about it. I had too much to do. The original founding charter for Calloway Integrated Services was a notarized document I had signed in a law office on Bull Street in March of 1991. Leonard Ferris, an estate and business attorney whose office had handled my personal will and the company's initial structure since the beginning, had drafted it. The document contained a standard founder's clause I had not thought about in years, a buyback provision that allowed the founding member to reacquire majority control under specific conditions, including involuntary removal by board vote at fair market value minus a founder's discount. I had signed it. The board had signed it. It had sat in my fire safe on Habersham Street, in a manila folder behind the house deed, for 31 years. I did not mention this at the October meeting. The call from Marcus came on a Tuesday, March 14th at 4:47 p.m. I was at the Habersham Street house, in the back office, reviewing the Port Authority renewal documents that Marcus had been slow in returning. He said the words carefully. He said the board had met that morning. He said they had voted. He said the company needed someone with a different focus going forward, and that the board felt the transition would be better handled with new leadership in place. He said, "Dad, you're just not what this business needs anymore." Something behind my sternum went very still. I said nothing. I let the line breathe. Marcus said they had arranged a transition package. He said Garrett would be stepping into the CEO role, and that Diane would be managing the transition. He said he hoped I understood. My voice held. I told him I would be in the next morning to collect my things. I arrived at 8:31 a.m. the following day, the Wednesday before Labor Day. I cleaned out my desk in 11 minutes. I did not take the company plaques. I took the frame photo of the first job site, a mechanical pencil I had used for drafting since 1993, and a coffee mug that had Ruth's handwriting on it in permanent marker. Her grocery list from a Saturday in 2018, the last one she had written. I carried the box to the elevator. The elevator made it half-second catch before the doors opened, the same catch it had made since 2003, when the cable guide had slipped and I had paid to have it partially repaired, but never fully corrected because I had grown accustomed to the sound. I stepped out into the lobby. Garrett was waiting at the front entrance. He extended his hand. His face was arranged into an expression of professional warmth. I nodded once. I walked past him to the parking structure. I sat in my truck on the third level for 22 minutes. My eyes stung. Not quite tears. The kind of pressure that builds behind them when something very large is shifted, and the body has not caught up to the fact that it is over. I had spent 31 years in that building. I had covered the company's payroll out of my personal line of credit for 11 weeks during the 2008 recession, so that not one crew member missed a check. I had taken a second mortgage on the Habersham Street house in 2005 to fund the equipment upgrade, when the bank loan fell short by $89,000. I had spent 14 months retrofitting the Port Authority contracts myself after the electrical subcontractor defaulted in 2013. Working 6 days a week, billing 17-hour days, I never put on the company's books because I did not want the quarterly report to show the labor cost. I had done these things. My son had just removed me from the company by board vote with phone call at 4:47 in the afternoon. Diane called that evening at 6:22. She said she wanted me to know she had not made the decision lightly. She said the board had discussed it at length. She said, "Dad, it was unanimous. We just think this is the right direction for everyone." She said she hoped we could keep the family relationship separate from the business. I didn't answer for a long moment. I said I understood. She said she was glad. She said Garrett was very excited about the direction. She said she thought I would be proud of what they built from here. My face went still. I said goodnight. I went to bed at 10:14 and lay on top of the covers for a long time looking at the ceiling. Ruth's side of the bed still had the same pillow arrangement she had kept. I had not moved them. I stared at the ceiling and thought about the fire safe in the back office and the manila folder behind the house deed, and I thought about Leonard Ferris and whether he still kept the same Tuesday hours. He did. I called Leonard Ferris at 9:23 a.m. on a Thursday, 2 weeks after the board vote. I had not spoken to anyone at the company in that time. I had not answered Marcus's message about the transition paperwork. I had driven past the building twice, once on purpose, and once because I took the long way home without thinking about it. Leonard picked up on the second ring. I told him I needed him to pull the original articles of incorporation and read me the founder's clause. There was a silence while he found the file. Then he read it. When he finished, I asked him if the board vote constituted an involuntary removal under the clause's language. He was quiet for a moment. He said, "Dennis, this is about as clean as it gets." I asked him what the next step was. He said he needed a fair market valuation and a notarized declaration of intent to exercise. I asked how long. He said 3 weeks if I moved quickly. I moved quickly. Victor Ambrose, a licensed business appraiser who had done 2 prior valuations for the company during its growth phases, completed the fair market valuation report on September 28th. His number was $2.3 million. The founder's discount in the original clause reduced my purchase price to $1.84 million. I had $1.1 million in personal savings. I took a structured loan against the Habersham Street property for the remainder. I had owned the house for 30 years. It had appreciated to $680,000. The bank approved the loan in 9 days. Carol Stanton, a certified notary at the county clerk's office on Montgomery Street, notarized my declaration of intent on October 3rd at 2:31 p.m. She stamped the document with a particular flat sound a notary stamp makes, heavy and final. I watched her sign her initials beside the stamp. She slid the document back across the counter. Without comment, I said thank you. She said you're welcome. Leonard Ferris filed a formal notice of exercise at 10:07 a.m. on October 3rd, the same day. The company had 30 days to respond. My hands went still on the founding charter that evening, sitting at the desk in the back office on Habersham Street. I had taken the document out of the fire safe and set it on the desk under the lamp and read every page. The clause was 17 lines. I had read it once in 1991 when I signed it, and not again until this year. 31 years of company history had happened inside those 17 lines without anyone knowing they were there. I said nothing to Marcus. I said nothing to Diane. I said nothing to Garrett. I let that settle. Marcus called at 7:48 p.m. on October 17th. I could hear the controlled quality in his voice, the effort underneath the careful tone. He said the company's attorney had reviewed the notice. He said it was their position that the clause had certain ambiguities. He said he thought it would be worth getting together to talk about it. He said, "Dad, I just think we can work something out here that's better for everyone." I kept my face still. I told him Leonard Ferris had reviewed the clause language thoroughly and found no ambiguities. I told him I expected the response deadline to be honored. I told him I would see him at the board meeting. He said, "What board meeting?" I said the one Leonard Ferris had scheduled for February 19th. The line went quiet. I paused. Then I told him to have a good night and hung up. The board met on February 19th at 9 a.m. in the same conference room on the second floor of the Habersham Street building, the one whose addition I had built with my own crew on weekends in 2011. I arrived at 8:47. I set the original founding charter on the table in front of my chair. Leonard Ferris sat to my left. Victor Ambrose's valuation report was in a folder beside the charter. Marcus sat directly across from me. Diane was to his right. Garrett was at the far end of the table. His expression was a professional warmth one again, but his hands were flat on the table in a way that was not quite relaxed. Leonard Ferris opened by reading the founder's clause aloud. 17 lines, 31 years old, still notarized, still binding. The room stayed quiet. I kept my voice level. I said the purchase amount had been wired to the company's operating account at 9:58 that morning. I said Leonard had the confirmation. I said the shares would transfer on close of business. I said the only other thing I had to say was that effective immediately, Garrett Pruitt's role as CEO was concluded, but the founder's authority clause in the same document. Garrett's face went still, his hands pressed flat against the table. Diane looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at the founding charter. Something in my chest did something it had not done in years. Not triumph, not relief exactly. Something quieter, a compression, a settling, the way a structure feels when the last load-bearing element locks into position, and you know, before any instrument confirms it, that it will hold. I did not gloat. I did not make a speech. I picked up my copy of the charter, folded it once along the original crease, and placed it back in the manila folder. I said I would be in the office at 7 the following morning, and that the department heads should plan to meet at 8. I stood up. I put on my coat. Dennis Calloway, 64 years old. And back at the head of the company, he had started with a panel van and $14,000, and every one of his own hands hours. In the months that followed, Marcus took a sales role at a competing firm. Diane remained in the bookkeeping position she had always been good at, and we did not discuss February 19th in any direct way, which was the Calloway family's method for most things. Garrett was gone by the end of the week. The crew who had been with the company since the early years, the ones who remembered the 2008 payroll weeks and the Port Authority retrofit months, came by the office on the Wednesday after the board meeting to shake my hand. Luis Ventura, the site supervisor who had been with me since 1999, said only that it was good to see my name back on the door. I told him to get back to work. He laughed. The company returned to profitability in the third quarter. The Port Authority renewed the contract in October. I hired a new operations director from outside the family and gave him the same desk Garrett had used, which I had moved 6 inches to the left because I had never liked where Garrett had positioned it. Some documents are not just paper. Some documents are the record of every hour you put into something before anyone was watching and the hour you signed them, and the 31 years you left them in a fire safe because you hoped you would never need them. The man who signs the front of the check never forgets who built the back of the building. Some inheritances are a clause, some are a founding charter, and some are the 31 years of early mornings it takes to make 17 lines of legal language mean something. Dennis Calloway, 64 years old, and the door still has his name on it. If you were sitting at that board table on February 19th when Leonard Ferris read those 17 lines aloud, if you've ever watched someone hand away what you built and wondered if there was any way back, leave a comment and tell me what you would have done with that fire safe. And if this story found you today, hit the like button and subscribe to Dad's True Revenge. If you like this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more real, raw, and family-centered stories. And as always, thank you for being a part of this sphere.